Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Online for Authors. Today I have with me Erica D'Arcangelo, who has written a book called A Story of Pizza. And it's not just about eating. It's very much about the life of her grandfather, Pietro, who some people called Pete. But Erica, let me ask you this. So your life was pretty normal growing up in a Catholic Italian family in Pennsylvania, and you had 4 siblings. But it wasn't until after you completed college and joined the marketing industry that you decided to revisit your heritage. So that's when you started to put the story of Pietro to paper. Tell us what life was like for him in Italy and his experience coming to America.
So, he lived a very typical life of growing up Italian. He was from Abruzzo, Italy. It was a very small area in the region of Langiano. It's very beautiful. There's a lot of sea, a lot of mountains, a lot of nature. And he was just a young boy who would walk around and eat pizza and went to school and had his parents and his siblings. And at that time, there were a lot of people immigrating to the United States for a better life. And so his parents and his 4 brothers, they had actually a sister, but she passed away, I think, very young.
Oh.
Yeah, they decided to make the change and to get on the boat and come over to America and go to Ellis Island, just as many, hundreds of thousands of Italians did during the early 1900s.
Exactly. I know I read a little bit about your great-grandmother, his mother, Anna. I noticed when she was coming across, she was very careful to ration food for the whole family, especially her 4 boys as she crossed over. Do you remember anything about her as a great-grandmother? Was she around when you were growing up?
She passed away when my father was a boy.
Oh,
and
sorry.
She was very lovely, but she lived with my grandparents for a long time because my great-grandfather, Justino, had passed away first. And in an Italian family, a lot of the time, the mother would go and live, with the family. And she helped a lot in the store when they first opened D'Arcangelo's Market. And from what I understand, she was just an amazing cook and just a great person.
Typical Italian lady. I once visited Rome and stayed in this. It was sort of a place where most of the Italians were living. And one night I walked in and there was this lovely Italian grandmother. She had a table in the hallway, and she was making gnocchis. And she said, "Come, I show you." And that's what I think of when I think about it anyway. So one of the other things I remember and just enjoyed was when they first came to New York, his uncle Angelo and wife Maria with her beehive hairdo had them at their house in New York. And that must have been such a different shock for them coming from Italy. And they stayed there for a few days, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny part about that is, Justino was very quiet. He was very serious and reserved. And then on the other hand, his brother was just very almost cartoonish and enthusiastic and loud. And Justino almost was uncomfortable because he was in the city of New York for the first time. He had this boisterous, loud brother, and his wife was also very loud. And then you have Anna and Justino, who are just very conservative, very quiet, very careful people.
Yeah, I found that enjoyable to read about that part. So Pietro then ended up moving to Pennsylvania to the coal mines. But he didn't want to work in the coal mines as a breaker boy. In fact, he called it the Black Hell, I think I read. And there was even a time when the mafia tried to charge them for protection. Tell us what that was like.
I mean, that was a time where people really did not have protection where they were working. My grandfather was 9 years old and he was pulled out of school. and he went to work in the coal mines. And this wasn't his dream. He was an amazing cook. He loved food. He always wanted to make pizza. And he struggled from the age of 9 until he was 40 when the mines closed. He had black lung. And then that's when he pursued this dream. But then on top of that, because you had so many Italian immigrants, you had spots where this Italian mafia would pop up.
Oh.
Yeah, so this happened in Wimber, Pennsylvania, but Justino was a very, serious man, and he did not want to be messed with. So he definitely used a, tactic to get the mafia to leave him alone that I don't know that you would use today.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, you're right. So getting that pink slip from the coal mines changed his life forever, pretty much. Tell us about his idea for a market.
Absolutely.
That was the first thing. Yeah.
I mean, basically, right down the street from the building that he bought, it was the Rillo family. And now that's Rizzo's Italian restaurant. That Italian restaurant's still open today. They've been open longer than DRX Pizza. And they would have an outdoor market. And so my grandmother, Nicolette, and my great grandmother, Anna, they would go to the market and they would sell, stuff from the garden, baked goods, just things like that. And so when the mines closed, my grandfather saw the building, and it was a Berwyn white building, and he ended up deciding to buy it. And they just decided to use all the things they made and sold and have those at the market, along with pastas and Italian sauces. And they even had silverware and pasta makers and coffee makers and just very, basic Italian market items.
It became a little Italy of its own.
Absolutely. I mean, that whole east end of Wimber is still called Little Italy. And you still have DRX Pizza. You still have Leone Subs. They've been open, I think, 105 years. You still have Rizzo's restaurant. And these were all the original immigrants who came over and opened these places.
Wow. And they're still there. That's amazing. Yeah. What was it like for Pietro when he was taken back for visit to Abruzzo?
It was very nostalgic because, what my dad said, it was my mom and my dad and my brother and my grandfather, and they went back to Abruzzo. And at the time, my dad didn't really know that my grandfather spoke Italian. My grandfather was really soft-spoken. He didn't say much. And they met up with his cousin, Carmen Abenizio. And immediately the two cousins were crying and embracing, and my grandfather started speaking Italian fluently. And so it was just very beautiful to watch that reunion and to watch them go around the town of Abruzzo, hand in hand, just cousins reunited and eating together and just enjoying each other.
Yeah, and that's what he remembered also about being there as a little boy, as a young boy. The thing that he kept remembering, though, was going for that pizza. Continually I read, that was what his memory was. Going for his pizza. Did you ever get to visit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I went to live there for a summer when I was 16.
Really?
Yeah, which was very lovely. And then as we were older, what happened was my father decided to take our whole family there. So we have 5 kids in the family, and, my sister's husband went, we took my daughter, and we did a 2-week trip.
Wow.
And that was incredible. And then we were going every single year up until COVID happened.
Oh.
And even now, again, my father's living in Abruzzo now because he's getting his Italian citizenship. So he and my mother have been in Abruzzo for the better part of this year.
Wow.
And have been enjoying it, and may end up, having a house there and being there for, part of every year.
So who's running Darks?
My uncle is helping with it. And then my dad has been going back and forth, and he has a really good staff who have been, there for a really long time. So it really runs like a well-oiled machine at this point.
So tell me, is your pizza thick, thin crust? What is that pizza like?
So it's called a traditional Abruzzo style pizza, which means it's not super thin, but it's also not very thick, but it's a rectangular pizza and it's 15 slices.
It is rectangular. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not like the focaccia, like it doesn't have that thickness to it.
Okay. And the real question I want to know is, how do you hold it when you eat it?
I just grab it with my fist. as many slices as I can, and just.
So you don't fold it like some people fold it over.
No,
No.
I don't fold it. No, but I will tell you, we have another pie that's called Mike's pie, and it's a round, thin pie. And the reason we have that is because my little brother Mike didn't like square pizzas when he was growing up. So we started doing the round, thin pie, and then people liked it so much we made it one of our second pies.
Oh my, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, I understand that you've also written a children's book about the pizza. How is that displayed? That's different, obviously. Does it talk about your grandfather, or is it really about the pizza?
So the children's series, the first book is called Pietro's Pizza. And it follows a little boy, Pietro, the same character, from Italy, Abruzzo, Italy, to America as he opens a pizzeria. But it's very much in children's form. Now, the cool thing is that I had a very talented illustrator, and I sent her all the pictures of my grandfather and all his brothers, and she hand drew all the illustrations. So,
wow.
Yeah, you see the market, you see the streets of Abruzzo, and just everything is very much like it was from the pictures. And then the other books are like, one is about pizza toppings. So it teaches kids about different pizza toppings. And then one's about Italian Christmases. So Pietro's Italian Christmas. So they all have a lesson, and they all teach kids about Italian culture.
Perfect children's books. Absolutely perfect. I was going to ask you also, are you working on a new one currently?
I am working on a new one currently about Italian Christmases.
You are?
Yeah, it's a new novel. And, in our family, we always had the Feast of the Seven Fishes. And this is with a lot of Italian families. And there was so much that went into this extravaganza every year with this big Italian family. We'd sometimes have 40 or 60 people at the table eating. And it really goes through the journey of this week before Christmas and this Italian Christmas feast on Christmas Eve, and just celebrating Christmas as a family.
That sounds great. Where did you get the idea? Clever idea, I would say, to add a recipe after each chapter.
So I can't take credit for that. One of my really good friends, he actually makes movies for a living. He, was the one who helped initially. We talked about writing the book, and I sent him the manuscript. I think he was the first one that read it. And he said, hey, I think it'd be really cool if you added some recipes. And I did. And that's one of the things that people tell me that they really love about the book.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. You want to wait and see what, you want to get up and try it right away instead of reading the rest of the book. So I know you dedicated the book to your father. I'm sure that made him pretty proud. At any rate, tell me how you, most of us we get asked, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? And where do you place yourself in that as a writer?
I think I'm a plotter.
Yeah.
So I really do.
Yeah. So you know how that is. And what is your favorite type of writing? In other words, morning, afternoon, evening. When do you enjoy writing the most?
I really enjoy writing in the morning. And funny enough, I love writing on the weekend mornings. Like, I like to make a matcha tea and sit down and just, go over my outline, and then go over my chapter and start kind of laying out my chapter. But what happens sometimes is I'll decide, like, oh, I'm just going to write in the morning, but I'll enjoy the writing process so much that sometimes I'll write till dinner. And then I'm like, oh, I've just written the whole day. I have to stop and maybe get some other work done, because I become very obsessed with the writing process. It's like almost therapeutic for me.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. So even though you are doing some writing, are you novel writing? Are you still doing some of the other writing that you were doing before you started this first book?
Yeah, I'm still working on the children's series. I have the second book being illustrated right now. I wrote the third book. That one's going to go to illustration next. I do write, Medium articles and different articles on LinkedIn about Italian culture and kind of blending marketing and branding and book selling with culture and stories and experience. And then I have a podcast that's about pizzas. It's a pizza story. And so I do that a lot, where I interview family-owned pizzerias and people within the, Italian culture. And we talk about a lot of food is what my favorite topic is.
It's interesting. That's really interesting. So you've pretty much told people that they can find you doing this podcast. How else can they get in touch with you or learn about your books?
A storyaboutpizza.com, or if you just Google a story about pizza, that's probably the most simple way to get in touch with me. So yeah, that's my website. All the books are there. All the links are there. The podcast is there. Everything's there.
That's cool. That's cool. You mentioned earlier, I wanted to go back 1 second here. You mentioned about your illustrator. I know that my husband is a children's picture book writer. And when he first started, his first book was a story about Papa, which was buying his grandfather a present for his birthday. And he didn't have an illustrator, and he isn't an illustrator. And so he searched and searched and searched, and he finally found one who actually lives in Taiwan. And what he did was he sent him, you reminded me, he sent him pictures of one of our grandchildren. And he came up with, it looked like it was Sam, this is what, a present for Papa. And it was, the little boy's name was Sam, and it looked just like Sam. And so for every other children's book now, he sends pictures like you did of, another grandchild. So Sam meets Sophia at Camp Cool. So now one of our granddaughters, Rachel, is now Sophia. And I never heard anyone else talking about sending the picture that you wanted and having them draw it. It's really not, the norm. You usually tell them, I want this, and they send you this draft. And I remember the first book I wrote, it was about my mother. And I told the illustrator I wanted it to be something in the 40s and, something of a housewife, and they sent me this picture of a woman in a bikini on a beach.
Oh.
And I thought, well, that is the farthest thing from my mother I ever wanted to do. So it ended up, I just put a picture of my mother on the cover, and it worked so much better. But anyway.
I put a picture of my dad on the cover of A Story About Pizza. That's a picture I took of him in Abruzzo.
Is that right?
Yeah, on our land. So I love that. I think it's so meaningful to do that.
It is, because it works so much better. And all the books that I have written since, I try to go to the location and actually take pictures. So my books are now my pictures on book covers. And you're right. They work so much better. I think it's a much better feeling. I don't know. Anyway, if our listeners and viewers want to see more or learn more about some of your books, they can go on Facebook. Novels and Latte is there, and on occasion they will give away one of your books. So they might be lucky enough to get one that way. But anyway, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I wish you luck. I think your little niche here is very successful, and especially with the children, I think that's great. I look forward to reading the one about the Italian Christmas. I think that's really good.
I will send you an advanced reader's copy as soon as it's done.
Oh, they're ready. Yes. Oh, I definitely want to read about that. That's definite. I'm into that kind of thing. And I will talk to you about it as soon as we get to read it. That would be great. So thank you again for joining me. And I will read the book when I get it. And I hope that the rest of you will join us for our next episode of Online for Authors. Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Carole.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.